Work session for Wednesday, August 3rd. I'd like to call this meeting to order. If we can all rise for pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Doing roll call, all council members are present. Any public comment at this time? No public comment. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt by Councilman Burgley. Second by Councilman Collison. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Mr. Becker, take her away.
I put it in the cup on the end. I didn't know whose it was. The blue one.
All right, so second budget work session. General focus of the second budget work session is capital. Our first budget work session was the operating expenditures. This one's capital. Going through the agenda here. We'll start with the general fund capital budget. That's it, housed in Fund 920. General fund is Fund 101. But we simply identify all those capital expenditures separately. Makes understanding the budget a little easier, makes tracking cash balances and projecting them into the future quite a bit easier. We'll go through street construction is $425 and pavement management is $440. Remember that some point in the future here we'll combine those two into one. Then we'll get through water, sewer, stormwater. Liquor will be kind of probably be the most talking on this one. With a new store, this is now a entirely brand new plan that we'll be looking at. So I'll be asking some thoughts on that and make sure we're barking up the right tree on that. And then we'll round out with technology fund. And I don't have any operating budgets updates right now. And then before we adjourn, we'll make an assessment as to whether or not we want to have an additional work session. We've not generally done that in the past, but that is the council's entirely the council's decision if they'd like that to happen at the next meeting. All right. We went through the schedule here for last time. Only a key reminder is that once we set that preliminary levy in September, we can lower the levy, but we cannot raise the levy. And so, like I had mentioned at the last work session, I'll continue to kind of crunch the numbers and give it some thought, but we might very well be asking to basically set the preliminary levy artificially high. If we don't have some components of the budget in place, we don't know certain things yet, we might just intentionally give ourselves wiggle room, understanding that we intend to bring that down from what we set it preliminarily. And then we'll get into December and we'll set that final budget, final levy. All right. So you guys also have this in your packet and on the iPads. These are the capital expenditures that we've got budgeted right now for 2023 in Fund 920. So these would be the general fund associated expenditures. Part of the plan that we've had now for a number of years here is the squad vehicle. We replace those. Squad vehicles go every 5 years. Non-squad vehicles like the lieutenant's vehicle, chief vehicle, investigator, we let those go 10 years. We've got about $50,000 of expenditures in here for help pay for some of the stuff at the new PD building. If we get to a point where we realize that that's not sufficient to get them in the door, we may very well revisit that. But as Chief and I have talked about it, the goal at this point is do the things that need to be done to get them in the building, and then we'll reevaluate the needs and wants after the fact once they've had an opportunity to use the building and kind of live in it a little bit. Got a truck for streets, and actually, it's worth noting, all these ones that are streets, there is a cost sharing, water and sewer funds contribute percents to those as well. But they have to be represented, a line item in one place. So we've got some of these items here, especially with the street equipment, same rule as always. If we go to Matt and he says, you know what, my 18-foot felling trailer is in great shape, I don't need a new one, that's fine. We don't spend the money. We re-up it for 2024 and reevaluate at that time. That's what I've communicated to all the department heads. That's what we expect. They know that's what the council expects. Then we've got street lighting, so we've got pole replacement, and then we've got pole infill, right? Pole replacement is existing, the equipment that we've got, the infrastructure we've already got, and infill is adding to that overall infrastructure. Big expenditures here would be the restrooms and splash pad at Bluebird Park, which of course we've discussed, and we've got some grant money coming contingent on that money being available. And we've got some other items here. Kubota mower, two of those, just to be clear, the price seems a little low, but there is a trade-in, right? So we're taking the residual value off the existing ones and applying that to the new purchase. Absolutely.
Questions anytime?
Absolutely.
So, I don't need any discussion other than your answer. So just when are we gonna give that final approval with the, well, maybe that's not a good question, but what's the working budget on that splash pad? What's put in the?
So this is what we've got up here is that basically rounds out to 437, and then the state has offered or has agreed to contribute 300,000, and then they want to see some additionals on that. Yep.
So I'm sorry, what I meant was monthly budget once it gets in.
Oh, what do we think, like expenditure-wise?
Yeah. Did we come up with a monthly budget for that?
Operating, it's basically where we left the discussion last time. The for the system that we are going with, where it's not a recycling system, right?
Right,
It's just
yep.
basically put the water in,
Put the
water
in
goes
and
out,
let it
right?
drain.
On that one, it is basically the expense of water. And at the point we have to meter the water, we got to be able to keep track of it. But as to whether or not the council wants to charge any other fund for that use, you can charge that money if you want. You don't have to charge that money.
So we could just use the water without any real cost, is what you're saying?
We have to meter it, but the council can decide that they do or do not want to actually.
Is there any other costs associated with them, outside the water? Because we're not gonna hire employees.
Yeah, we wouldn't be hiring employees. I mean, there would be some ongoing maintenance, but I'm not.
We haven't calculated that out
Yeah,
yet.
and
Okay.
I'm not, I mean, until you kind of see the equipment they end up with, it's a little bit difficult.
Okay.
Equipment that has moving parts, going to break down sooner, going to have more maintenance. Equipment that has no moving parts and just water coming out of it like a shower head, considerably less maintenance.
Okay.
Right? I wouldn't expect there to be as much ongoing.
There will be some
capital
water
costs.
testing that will need to be done. We're not hiring staff for it, but we still will have some staff operating expenditures with it too.
Yeah, the biggest ongoing expense I would expect would be the actual water usage, and it's whether we want to take money out of this pocket and put in this one or not. I mean,
Thank you.
for, I combined 425 and 440 onto one, obviously, I think that makes a lot of sense, and someday there'll just be one fund here anyway, but 440 is standard pavement management, right, our seal coating project, do that every year, that's paid through utility franchise fees. Fund 425, the only project we've got queued up for 2023 would be that we'd hope that we can move forward on intersection control by Quick Trip. The 400,000 we have allocated is our understanding that we would be responsible for roughly 1/3 of the total project, and we would be requesting state aid assistance on that. So that would be money that would come from the state. We would put it into the project. It's not actually city dollars aren't actually going to be leaving on that project. And then if the intersection doesn't happen, we just keep rolling that forward. For water fund, we've got quite a few items. A lot of them smaller ticket items in that $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $8,000 range. But these are all items that You know, they've got a set useful life, and we've got to go through and make sure we're keeping them up. Some of this stuff is definitely critical infrastructure. It's the kind of stuff you do not want to see fail. And if you are going to risk failure, you probably ought to have a backup on hand anyway, at which point maybe you ought to put it in, right? Some of these items, you know, we've got some heaters on here. You know, that would be the type of thing that we don't want to see Matt, you know, make an assessment on. If the heater's running fine, looks fine, sounds fine, let's kick that down the road. But some of these things you definitely need to be able to tackle before you have a problem. Two biggest expenditures on here, well pump 3. This is essentially the same work as we just did on well 1 over by the fire station. That's the kind of work that yeah, again, you want to make sure you're taking care of those wells before you have a problem. You really can't afford to let that stuff go. The other is water tower coating. We had the study based on, what was it, 3 to 5 years ago? Bolton and Mink went through, said, hey, here's where we're at. This is the timeline we think it ought to be done. Here's what we think the anticipated cost will be. I've been budgeting the entire time for the high end of that project, and in the not too distant future, that will come before the council. And council will have a decision as to whether or not they want to recoat the whole thing, do some portion of it, and then, you know, revisit that sooner rather than later if you only do a portion.
I feel like maybe we've had a discussion on this already, and I just have forgotten kind of what the answer was, but what is the water tower coating? I mean, what is that really? I mean, what are we,
Literally paint.
just paint?
Yeah, basically. Protect the structure and make sure that you're not rusting out critical parts on the structure. Yeah, because you got to tent it.
Yikes.
Because
Otherwise-
I didn't hear the explanation.
We're in the wrong
You
business.
have to tent the water tower. If you
Oh.
don't, you're going to end up basically, well, whatever color we would paint it, that's what every building and car nearby is going to end up being. And that's actually experience. That was actually something that actually happened at Granite Falls, actually.
Is the paint in rough shape now, or I mean, what's the?
Yeah, there are spots that we identified several years ago, not long after I got here, that were already rusted out. Paint was already done. Bolton and Mink looked at it, said, yeah, we need to do something. It doesn't need to be done today, as in 2018 maybe? Yeah. It was probably about the year. They said in 2018, yeah, it doesn't look good, but it doesn't need to be addressed yet. And they are putting together a report of here are the things that we think, you know, need to be addressed today. And, you know, if you want to just do the whole thing, it's basically, if you want to do the whole thing, you can set aside the recoating for another 20 years. If you want to do spot repairs, then we got to revisit this 5 or 10 years. Spot repairs, 5 or 10 years. So it's kind of the frequency that you want to be tackling it. There's not really a shortcut around making sure that the metal on that tower is structurally sound. What's that? That's a city engineer. Yep, they just provide the recommendation, and then if we do go forward with the project, we'd bid that out, and you know, you do the sealed bids and all that stuff, presuming it'd be over.
Which generally, he's high on everything. So, I mean, it could potentially come in at 700,000, but still, that seems crazy.
Well, when you have to tent a water tower that far up in the air, first of all, there are not that many painting companies that are willing to tackle that.
And you have to prime the rust spot, so you have to deal with that, otherwise it's just gonna rust through the new coating. So
What do
there's
we do
some
with the
work.
water in there?
This is just exterior, we're not doing the inside
Okay,
at this time.
okay.
So there's like inside coatings that do also need to get done with that inspection report that Mike's referring to. It looked fine and intact, as well as the water bladder that is also below too, all looked intact. It's the outer elements that are subject to like acid rain, things that are gonna break it down. But you do have to address the rust before you do put that coating on there. It's some really, really tall ladders, equipment that they're working on. Yep. Plus,
Tall ladder.
all
Do
of-
they really use ladders?
on trucks and cranes and things, yeah, and they do have
I
to
thought they
take
would
off.
use like that.
They'll have scaffolding coming down, they'll
Yeah.
use
Yeah.
ladders or cranes going up, it'll be
Holy
whatever they
buckets.
work, and
And
it's
they-
gonna depend on the size, or the shape of
No.
Yeah,
each
when they
water tower.
pressure washed it, they use big ladder like trucks to get up there with pressure washing it to clean it off, just so they could address everything. So we've had that done in the past years ago.
That they
They
just
also have to
rappel
remove,
down.
which is
Some of it they
somewhat
don't.
sensitive, is remove the infrastructure that we have attached to the water tower, remove all those so they can paint and recoat up there on the top, which is things we don't see. It's quite busy up there, and they have to address that too.
But that is an expenditure we've been planning on. That is an expenditure that's been considered in our last rate study in 2021. So, but Bolton and Mink will bring that report, and it'll be council's decision how to proceed.
Just curious, how much does a new water tower cost?
I think I would ask that question, though.
Just to,
Just-
I
yeah,
mean,
just-
I can't believe it's,
Let's
I'm sure it's way more.
let's
than
compare
that, but I
apples
mean,
to
I'm just-
oranges here.
I think, I'm trying to remember, Cambridge just put one up.
And I was gonna say is, Blaine had put one up in 2017, and I'm trying to remember what they paid back then.
Well,
Now,
we
price
could
would
add
be
a
quite
lot of
bit-
money from 2017.
Well, and the
Things are
price would
different.
be quite a bit higher, and also, I don't think that the one that they built is the same capacity as this one. But
You think it would be substantially more?
to build a brand-new building?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's a brand-new water tower, yeah. But, I mean, we can give Jason a heads up, and he can pull some
Yeah,
numbers together. They,
Just
we-
asking for
well, 'cause
fun
they-
more than anything.
they
but-
would know. I mean,
Okay.
they work on those types of projects.
All right.
Jason wouldn't have an issue being able to pull that together, I wouldn't think. Sewer fund, remember this is, we pulled a lot of items forward when we got the ARPA money. And so stuff that we had scheduled for 2023, 2024, we pulled into 2022. That's why on, for the sewer fund, basically all we have is sewer fund's contribution to computing technology stuff. Remember, enterprise funds always pay their own way, so. Stormwater, computing technology, we got some contribution, right? They pay a share of like, public work truck and things like that. So they take a small share off of that. And then we've got the recurring infrastructure maintenance, right? For between 2017 and 2021, we did, 6-figure projects on stormwater infrastructure. Now that those projects are done, the intent here is to be re-upping an inflation-adjusted $10,000 a year, so we do not find ourselves in a position that we need to do 6-figure projects for stormwater in the future. All right, so this is kind of the big one. And I've changed the layout on this. You see a little more information on this. If anyone has comments, questions, please let me know. I tried to go through this and be as thorough as I could. I walked through the building several times. I talked to the store manager. I talked to assistant store manager. Tried to come up with what I thought would be a reasonable, useful life. Some of this I had to get a little guidance. I'm not exactly sure how long a beer cave door lasts. That's not exactly in my wheelhouse. So, so for example, I assume that the automatic sliding door on the beer cave is going to last not nearly as long as the access door on the back of it, right? So some basic assumptions like that. We've got the bituminous, the mill and overlay, and the reconstruct all figured out on there. We've got years identified on that. HVAC. We've got everything down to electrical fixtures, so this would be like the outlets, light switches, that type of thing. We got drop ceiling panels, indoor and outdoor paint. Well, the outdoor paint would actually just be replacing the siding. Fire suppression. I've got a couple things on there maybe aren't totally necessary to be on there based on their current price, but I'm expecting that the prices will go up and they'll fit the mold better for long-term planning. So if anybody's got any thoughts on this, I've got the metal roof down on 80 years. That is our long useful life item on this list. The other one that I really wasn't 100% sure on would be this one. The loading dock self-leveler, this was the one I was kind of the most uncertain about. That is not actually a hydraulic mechanical system that is making that dock go up. It's actually an airbag. So I'm not sure how long that will last. I don't know if that's going to last as long as the suspension on old town cars did. Town cars used to have airbag suspension as well. But so for now, anyway, I'd like to think that it should last at least 7 years, and then we'd do the same kind of thing we always do, right? If it's still running, keep it going, but I can keep queuing up that money each year so that when we do need it, it is available. Also, at this point, just to understand, this is the exercise for right now. We haven't been there in that new store long enough to be able to understand what our sales history and what we think our net profits would be at the end of each year, to be able to give a good projection on cash flows. I can put together and understand what the expenditures will be, but forecasting the revenues, we'll have to wait and see how that works out so that we can identify, is this the type of stuff where we need to push capital expenditures out past when we have bond payments? Or do we think we're doing well enough that we can queue these things up while we're making bond payments and transfers to the general fund and do it all? And so that'll be the kind of thing that we got, we'd want to get through 2022, see how that pans out. And if numbers continue, sales numbers continue the way they are, I don't think we're going to have a problem paying for capital over there. Sales have been very robust. So if anybody has any comments, don't need to have them tonight. If anybody's looking at this and they've got thoughts, email me, call me, come to City Hall. I'm happy to make adjustments, happy to take any input anyone has, especially in this first part. And then I would remind, just like we did with everything else. Oh, you know what? I did put this in too. During the building process, we did talk about that someday, because we want this to be an 80-year store, a forever store, that someday we might actually be big enough, we might actually need to expand the expanded store. So there is a little bit of money in there to be able to go off the north and knock out those last few parking spots to the north of the building. Give ourselves a reasonable amount of additional square footage. So that's in there. That would be obviously that'd be based on sales and need. But tentatively 20 years out. How about that? Technology, we've got our standard stuff. On this one, believe it or not, since we bought iPads for the council, it's 2023, it'll be 5 years. So council will have to provide, in this case, it would be the council that would provide direction as to whether or not they think the iPads need to be replaced. That's not.
Can I tell you, mine works fine, and
Yeah.
you can take that out. You can take that out now.
Yeah, normally I'm asking department heads, but department heads aren't necessarily going to know at this point on that stuff. So I can take that out and make that
Like
duly
a
noted.
gold retired one.
You don't get to take that with you, sorry.
He doesn't want to watch a gold iPad.
No
And so
party
then
gifts.
we've got a few other devices, iPads and Surfaces and things that we queue up here. But that's what we got. And then we'll roll these updated numbers into operating budget. I remember the operating budget I presented had a line item for capital, but it was based on the prior year's capital plan. Now this updated one will fold into that. I don't expect that to be any real issue for any of the funds that we're talking about. Let's see. So I don't have any operating budgets. So then it would be unless there's questions on what I just presented, at this point I think we just need direction on whether or not we want to have a third budget work session.
I would, just because I like to hear you talk, Mike, so.
I don't think a third would be a bad idea. You keep us all informed. And it would be the final, right?
Yeah, so we set those dates aside back, I think we probably did April this year. I think maybe it's when we passed the resolution, we say, these are the dates. We set the first two as being definitive. We are doing, second meeting in July, first meeting in August, and then the third is only set by resolution as if needed, is how we determine that. So that's the council's decision now.
And when do we pass the budget? You said December?
Preliminary budget would be the first meeting in September. Final budget would be first meeting in December.
So you still have.
Well, so we have,
There's still
have-
time.
Yeah, there's still time.
And yes, and we can,
So
we can,
do we
we
need that
can-
third one meeting?
Well, if we
'Cause-
wanted to push out a third one, we could for a little bit yet, right?
well, so there's a couple ways to think about this. Is one, if we do another one in 2 weeks, I won't necessarily have a lot of information to present.
Right.
Yeah.
I might, right? I
That's
mean,
what I'm
things
saying.
could
we
change.
move it out a little past that, or is
So,
that?
yeah, so this is where I've kind of mentioned now at the last this work session, the prior is that I may very well recommend to the council that you set that levy in September artificially high. So there would always be an opportunity to have a third work session between the preliminary and the final, which, given the situation we're in, might make some sense. right? It's possible that we're gonna find ourselves in a situation where, well, the budget we've already looked at and talked about at the work sessions looks great, but now given this new reality of, you know, things that we might learn, we might need to make choices, right? So it would be an opportunity to be able to say, yeah, we're gonna have a special work session, the second meeting in September, first meeting in October, something like that. But so long as we've set that levy artificially high and given ourselves wiggle room, you can pull it down, but you cannot go back up. You cannot raise it. If we try to raise it in December, the county will automatically, by state statute, set it to the lower amount that you originally approved in the preliminary one. So that would be an option. There would also be options at each committee of the whole meeting
Are you,
for budget updates.
are you the one that's gonna recommend to the council, here's where I think we should put the levy, or do we come up with a number ourselves? How does that work?
I will definitely make a recommendation.
He's always made the recommendation.
I assume so, but
Yep.
he keeps saying you, like, we're gonna make a decision.
Well,
$17, how's that?
yeah, I always, yeah, I make the recommendation, but I'm never under the illusion that it's anything other than your choice. And then whether I think it's a good choice or a bad choice, by God, I get on board, so.
Sounds good, Mr. Becker. Anybody have any questions, comments, or concerns?
We need to close this meeting?
But it sounds like we're just gonna wait and see if we need a work session, either a separate one or
I think we
through-
should. Should we
Yeah.
wait till the September and then?
October, November, something like that.
Or do it through committee or something. you know.
Yeah.
Or
Okay.
through the whole, committee hole.
Yep,
If you're over there waving a flag saying, hey, the third one might be a good time, then we'll do the third.
Not a lot will change between now and 2 weeks from now,
No.
I'm not expecting that.
but
What?
maybe, you know,
Yeah, I
in
think.
2 months from now?
Well, and let's also
might be
remember
some
this,
things
is if we gain a bunch of information in, say, a week and a half, I might need a week and a half
Wave the flag.
to do my thing, you know? I wouldn't want to show up the next day unprepared. I'd want to make sure I've given consideration to the options the council might have.
Thanks, Mike.
Sounds good to me. Thank you, sir.
Motion to close?
Do I
Motion to
have-
close this meeting.
Motion to adjourn this meeting by Councilman Burgley. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Collison. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Therefore, we stand adjourned.